Delphi, Indiana, was a quiet town where everyone knew each other, a place where children could ride their bikes freely and families felt safe. The Monon High Bridge, an abandoned railroad trestle surrounded by woods and trails, was a popular spot for locals, particularly teenagers looking for adventure. On February 13, 2017, two best friends, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, decided to spend their day off from school exploring the area. The weather was unseasonably warm for an Indiana winter, making it the perfect afternoon for a hike. Libby's older sister dropped them off near the entrance to the trails, unaware that this would be the last time she would see them alive. At around 2:07 p.m., Libby posted a picture of Abby walking along the Monon High Bridge on Snapchat, a seemingly ordinary moment captured between two friends. However, not long after, they would encounter someone who changed everything. When they failed to return to the pickup location at the scheduled time, their families grew concerned. By early evening, a search had begun, with law enforcement and volunteers combing the trails and surrounding areas. Despite their efforts, there was no sign of the girls that night. Their families clung to the hope that maybe they had gotten lost or had wandered off too far, but a sense of unease lingered in the air. The next day, February 14th, those fears were realized when searchers discovered the bodies of Abby and Libby about half a mile from the bridge, near Deer Creek. The news sent shockwaves through the town, turning what had initially seemed like a simple missing persons case into a horrifying crime scene. The girls had been murdered, but police did not immediately release details about the cause of death or any other specifics regarding the crime. The secrecy surrounding the investigation only fueled speculation and fear. Who could have done this, and why? Then, a stunning development changed the course of the case. Authorities revealed that Libby had recorded a brief video and audio on her phone, capturing their suspected killer. The grainy image showed a man walking toward them on the bridge, dressed in a blue jacket and jeans, his hands in his pockets. Even more chilling was the short audio clip released to the public, his voice commanding, "Down the hill." Investigators praised Libby for her bravery, believing that she had the foresight to record evidence that could one day lead to justice. Despite this incredible clue, the identity of the man remained a mystery. The case quickly gained national attention, with the FBI joining the investigation. The small town of Delphi was suddenly thrust into the spotlight, and its residents were left reeling. Parents became more protective of their children, and people who once felt safe now looked at strangers with suspicion. Billboards featuring the suspect's sketch, along with the eerie audio clip, were posted across Indiana, urging anyone with information to come forward. Thousands of tips poured in, yet none led to an arrest. For Abby and Libby's families, the pain was unimaginable. Their daughters had been taken from them in a way no parent could ever prepare for. Grieving while also fighting for justice, they dedicated themselves to keeping the case alive. The world knew that Libby had captured the face and voice of her killer, but years would pass before his name was revealed. The mystery of what had happened on that bridge haunted not only Delphi, but an entire nation desperate for answers. The years following the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German were filled with frustration, grief, and unanswered questions. As time passed with no arrests, the case became one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in modern history. Law enforcement remained committed to finding the killer, but the investigation was slow-moving, leaving the families and the public desperate for answers. The pain of not knowing who was responsible weighed heavily on Abby and Libby's loved ones, who had to endure birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays without justice. From the start, the investigation was complex. Despite having what many considered a crucial piece of evidence, a video and audio recording captured by Libby on her phone, police struggled to identify the suspect. The grainy image of a man walking on the Monon High Bridge and the chilling voice saying "down the hill" became infamous. Yet no one came forward with a definitive identification. Multiple sketches were released over the years, adding to the confusion. The first sketch, released in 2017, depicted a middle-aged man with a goatee, while a second sketch, released in 2019, showed a much younger suspect. The drastic change in appearance led to speculation that there were multiple suspects or that investigators had changed their theory about the perpetrator. Throughout the investigation, several persons of interest emerged, but none led to a breakthrough. One of the most publicized was Daniel Nations, a registered sex offender who bore some resemblance to the initial suspect sketch. He was investigated, but ultimately ruled out. Other potential leads surfaced, including individuals with histories of violent crimes, but none were definitively linked to the murders. The lack of concrete evidence and the changing direction of the investigation frustrated the public, leading some to question whether the case would ever be solved. As time passed, online communities and amateur detectives took it upon themselves to analyze every available clue. True crime forums, podcasts, and YouTube channels dissected the case, looking for missed details or hidden connections. While some efforts helped keep the case in the public eye, they also led to misinformation and false accusations. Innocent individuals were speculated about and harassed, adding another layer of complexity to an already difficult case. Law enforcement warned against wild speculation, emphasizing the importance of credible information, but the online frenzy surrounding the case only grew. The families of Abby and Libby refused to let their daughters be forgotten. They worked tirelessly to keep the case in the media, organizing events, advocating for new laws, and pushing for advancements in forensic technology. They were determined not to let the investigation fade into obscurity like so many other cold cases. Their persistence, along with the continued efforts of law enforcement, ensured that the case remained active despite the lack of immediate progress. By the time an arrest was finally made in 2022, 5 years had passed, and many had begun to lose hope. The long years of waiting, false leads, and shifting theories had taken an emotional toll on everyone involved. The arrest provided a glimmer of hope, but it also left lingering questions. Had investigators overlooked Richard Allen for years? Were there other suspects still out there? The journey toward justice had been long and painful, and even with an arrest, the search for the full truth was far from over. The arrest of Richard Allen in October 2022 was the breakthrough that many had hoped for, but had almost given up on. After 5 years of frustration, speculation, and stalled leads, law enforcement finally had a suspect in custody. The news sent shockwaves through the Delphi community and beyond, as people struggled to comprehend that a man who had lived among them for years was now accused of the horrific murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Allen, a local resident who worked at a nearby CVS pharmacy, had never been publicly named as a suspect before his arrest. This revelation made the case even more chilling. He had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Many people in Delphi had likely interacted with him without realizing they were face to face with the man accused of committing one of the most disturbing crimes in the town's history. Some residents recalled brief conversations with Allen, while others remembered seeing him around town, never suspecting that he could be connected to the crime that had haunted their community for years. The evidence that led to his arrest was both shocking and crucial. One of the key pieces was an unspent bullet found near the girls' bodies, which was later determined to have been cycled through a firearm owned by Allen. When questioned, Allen admitted to being near the Monon High Bridge on the day of the murders, but denied any involvement. Investigators also uncovered statements from witnesses who had reportedly seen a man matching Allen's description in the area that day. Additionally, his vehicle had been identified in connection to the crime scene, further placing him at the location during the critical time frame. The arrest affidavit, though heavily redacted at the time of its release, suggested that there was much more evidence against Allen than what had been publicly disclosed. Prosecutors were confident that they had built a strong case, but many questions remained. If Allen was responsible for the murders, why had it taken so long to identify him? Had he acted alone, or were there others involved? These uncertainties left some feeling that there was still more to the story than what law enforcement had revealed. As news of his arrest spread, reactions were mixed. The families of Abby and Libby expressed relief that progress had finally been made, but remained cautious, knowing that a conviction was far from guaranteed. They had endured years of waiting, false leads, and the emotional toll of an unsolved case, and now they faced the long and difficult process of trial proceedings. Meanwhile, the public continued to analyze every detail of the arrest, with many true crime enthusiasts and online investigators revisiting old clues and theories to see if they had missed something that could have pointed to Allen earlier. Despite the arrest, law enforcement continued investigating whether anyone else had been involved in the crime. Prosecutors hinted at the possibility of additional suspects, and new theories emerged about what might have really happened on that tragic day in 2017. The legal system would now determine Allen's fate, but for the people of Delphi, the case was far from over. The community remained on edge, grappling with the unsettling realization that justice was still a process, not an immediate resolution. The trial of Richard Allen was one of the most anticipated and emotionally charged events in recent history for the town of Delphi. For years, the families of Abigail Williams and Liberty German had waited for this moment, hoping to finally see justice served. As the courtroom filled with reporters, legal experts, and members of the community, the weight of the case was evident. The prosecution, armed with years of investigative work, presented its case methodically, laying out the evidence that had led to Allen's arrest and subsequent charges. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence was the ballistics report linking a firearm found in Allen's possession to an unspent bullet recovered near the crime scene. The prosecution argued that this, along with witness statements and Allen's own admissions, created a strong case against him. Additionally, his inconsistent statements during police interviews painted a picture of a man whose story had changed over time. Surveillance footage and cell phone records further placed him in the area on the day of the murders, contradicting his previous claims. The defense, however, countered with arguments aimed at creating reasonable doubt. They questioned the reliability of the ballistic evidence and suggested that the investigation had been mishandled. Given the years of delays and multiple changes in the suspect pool, they also pointed to the lack of direct DNA evidence linking Allen to the crime scene, raising concerns about whether authorities had rushed to judgment. The defense's strategy was to suggest that law enforcement had been under immense pressure to close the case and that their client had been unfairly targeted. Throughout the trial, emotional testimonies from family members of the victims brought the weight of the tragedy into sharp focus. Libby German's sister took the stand, recalling the last moments she saw her sibling and the agony of waiting for answers. Investigators who had worked on the case for years spoke of their frustrations, the false leads that had slowed their progress, and the collective determination that had kept them going. The jury listened intently as both sides painted vastly different pictures of what had transpired on that fateful day. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became the center of national attention. Media outlets covered every detail, and the case sparked heated debates among true crime followers. Some believed that the prosecution had built an airtight case, while others felt there were still too many unanswered questions. The role of social media was once again evident, with online sleuths analyzing court transcripts and dissecting every piece of evidence as soon as it became public. Finally, after weeks of testimony, the jury was sent to deliberate. Hours turned into days as the weight of their decision loomed over the courthouse. When the verdict was finally read, emotions ran high. The families held hands, bracing for the outcome. The judge's words echoed through the silent courtroom, and as the sentence was announced, tears, relief, and anguish filled the room. For some, the verdict brought a sense of closure, a long-awaited confirmation that justice had been served. For others, it marked just another chapter in a case that had left lasting wounds. While the trial had ended, the impact of Abby and Libby's story would remain, a haunting reminder of a crime that had forever changed Delphi. The conclusion of the Delphi murder trial marked a significant moment in the 8-year pursuit of justice. For the families of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, the verdict brought a sense of closure. Yet it could never erase the pain of losing their daughters in such a horrific way. As the courtroom emptied and the media frenzy died down, the people of Delphi were left to reflect on how this case had forever changed their small town. The tragedy had not only taken 2 young lives, but had also shaken the very sense of security that once defined their community. In the aftermath, the families focused on honoring Abby and Libby's memory. Over the years, they had transformed their grief into activism, advocating for legislative changes that would aid future investigations and prevent similar tragedies. One of their major contributions was the creation of the Libby and Abby Memorial Park, a space dedicated to preserving the girls' legacy and providing a safe area for families to gather. The families also worked to raise awareness about child safety, internet dangers, and the importance of community vigilance. While the legal battle had reached a resolution, lingering questions remained. Many speculated about whether Richard Allen acted alone or if there were others involved. The prosecution's case had presented compelling evidence, but some details left room for uncertainty. Online discussions continued, with amateur detectives combing through court documents, looking for inconsistencies or undisclosed information. Some believed there were still hidden truths that had yet to be uncovered. Others questioned if justice had been fully served, especially considering the complexities of the crime and the length of time it took to make an arrest. Technology had played a significant role in both the investigation and the trial, demonstrating the evolving power of digital evidence. Libby German's quick thinking in recording the suspect on her phone had provided law enforcement with a crucial lead, one that kept the case alive in the public eye for years. This case became a testament to the importance of modern investigative techniques, from forensic advancements to the use of online communities in spreading awareness. The impact of social media had been undeniable, both as a force for good and as a source of misinformation. It had helped keep the case in the spotlight, but it had also led to false accusations and misguided theories that, at times, hampered the official investigation. For the town of Delphi, healing was a slow process. The Monon High Bridge, once a symbol of adventure for local teens, had become a haunting reminder of what had happened there. Some residents avoided the area entirely, while others made efforts to reclaim it in honor of the girls. The tragedy had left scars, but it had also strengthened the community's resolve. Strangers had come together to support the families, and law enforcement had gained invaluable experience in handling complex criminal cases. Though justice had been served in the eyes of the court, true closure remained elusive. For Abby and Libby's loved ones, the pain of their absence would never fade, yet their families vowed to keep their memories alive, ensuring that their story would continue to inspire change, vigilance, and the relentless pursuit of justice for all victims of unsolved crimes.